Hey crew, it's Ben, and I'm back with another Bible study. Today we're going to be getting into Exodus 18, 19, and possibly 20, so we may make it all the way up to the Ten Commandments today. I don't know. I hold unconventional beliefs, and if you're not familiar with that, or if you don't know uh, what we're doing here, you probably want to start at the beginning because I would hate to hurt your feelings. I am doing a literal reading of the Bible. We are taking and discussing what it says, popping it out, looking at what we need to. We use Bible Hub for that reason. We can get many translations, we can get many word studies, whatever we need to along the way. So if anything's confusing, we figure it out. What we are getting from this is not the normal narrative. So if you're coming here and you're expecting, one of these biblical scholars from yesteryear and they're just expounding upon how this is the prophecy of Jesus come into Exodus, you're probably in the wrong spot. If you're coming here trying to figure out what they were talking about back in history and amalgamating stories, then stick around. With that being said, we are going to jump into Exodus 18 because we left off in Exodus 17. In Exodus 17, we found out that God was not going to indeed get rid of Amalek like he said he would because he will utterly blot their memory out. No, instead, we're going to be fighting against Amalek from generation to generation. So God is not faithful and true. And so now we're going to be getting a visit from Jethro. Jethro is the father-in-law of Moses. He is the priest of Midian, and he's the reason we have the laws and the judges. So let's see here. Now, Moses' father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, heard about all that God had done for Moses and his people in Israel, and how the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. And after Moses sent his wife Zipporah, his father-in-law Jethro had received her, along with her two sons. One son was named Gershom, for Moses had said, I have been a foreigner in a foreign land. And the other was named Eleazar, for Moses had said, the God of my father was my helper, and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. Moses' father-in-law Jethro, along with Moses' wife and son, came to him in the desert where he was encamped at the mountain of God. And he sent word to Moses, saying, I, your father-in-law Jethro, am coming to you with your wife and her two sons. And so Moses went out to meet his father-in-law and bowed down and kissed him, and they greeted each other and went into the tent. When Moses recounted to his father-in-law all that the Lord had done, Pharaoh and the Egyptians, for Israel's sake, had done to Pharaoh and the Egyptians for Israel's sake, all the hardships they had encountered along the way, and how the Lord had delivered them. And Jethro rejoiced over all the good things the Lord had done for Israel, whom he had rescued from the hands of the Egyptians. And Jethro declared, Blessed be the Lord, who has delivered you from the hand of the Egyptians and of Pharaoh, and who has delivered the people from the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know the Lord is greater than all the other gods, for he did this when they treated Israel with arrogance. So up until this point, he has been a priest of Midian, right? Well, now we're assuming a conversion, because then Moses' father-in-law Jethro brought a burnt offering and sacrifices to God, and Aaron came with the elders of Israel to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law in the presence of God. So at this point, he is becoming a part of the nation of Israel. Not before, but now that he's heard about all these miracles and the deliverance and all of the things that God has done so far, he's like, all right, cool. And then he's like, but there are tricks to this religion thing. There are things that you need to know in order to control this many people. Because he was a priest of Midian. And one of the things they teach you in seminaries or whatever religious institution you happen to study in is how to keep control of a narrative. That is one of the things that they teach you. And you do not graduate unless you know how you need to know both, what the narrative is and how to control it. And so Jethro advises Moses. And the next day Moses took his seat to judge the people, and they stood around him from morning until evening. And when his father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he asked, What is this you are doing for the people? Why do you sit alone as judge with all the people standing around you from morning till evening? Because the people come to me to inquire of God, Moses replied. Whenever they have a dispute, it is brought to me to judge between one man and another, and I make known to them the statutes and laws of God. But Moses, his father-in-law, said to him, "What you're doing's not good. Surely you and these people with you will wear yourselves out, because the task is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone." All right, so again, we're going to get back into the numbers, because you may not have seen it before when we talked about the numbers, but the number of people that we are talking about here is 600,000 fighting men, which brings us to 1.2 million married people who have at least double their population as children, because they were a growing people. So we are looking at over 3 million people, and Moses is doing all of the judging for everybody himself. Yes, that is overburdened, by all means. Now, we're not going to get into the possibility of bringing that many people through the desert, supplying water and food, and having them go out every morning and gather for 40 years the frost of the ground to be able to eat, because that's what it said that they did, right? They did that for 40 years in the desert because there was nothing to eat. And so, when Jethro sees this, right, it's like 3 million people, and he's like, wow, that's a lot of people, bro. And you can judge all these people by yourself. He's like, no, bro, you need to do this. He says, now listen to me. I'm going to give you some advice, and may God be with you. You must be the people's representative before God, and bring their causes to him. Teach them the statutes and laws, and show them the way to live and the work they must do. Now, we don't have the statutes and laws yet. Furthermore, select capable men from among the people, God-fearing, trustworthy men who are adverse to dishonest gain. Appoint them over the people as leaders of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Have these men judge the people at all times. Then they can bring you any major issue, but any minor cases they can judge on their own, so that your load may be lightened as they share it with you. If you follow this advice, and God so directs you, then you will be able to endure, and all these people can go in peace. This is very sound advice. I am not trying to knock Jethro for giving the advice, but why did God not give the advice? Why was it up to Jethro, as the priest of Midian, to step into the role of an Israelite and say, hey, we need to organize this? Why was it not God himself who said, hey, you need to organize this better? Why was God not observing that, right? It's the small inconsistencies. Like, I never knew, as many times as I have read the Bible, it was not until very recently that I realized that Jethro started the laws. And he did it here, and I'm not arguing against the validity of it, because the laws are good for the most part. Almost all of them make sense. They are very beneficial and probably even inspired, if not directly divinely, then certainly by representative thereof. I'm not discounting any of that at all. But why did God not initiate this? If he is bringing his people out of slavery and they don't have a reference system, why did he not do the instruction then? We're going to get into some instruction. That's the very next chapter. But it is not until after Jethro does his thing, steps in as a priest of another god into this position, that the organization comes forth. And it is a good thing that it did. I know that there are a lot of anarcho-capitalists out there, and I know that there are a lot of people who do not believe in government. This is the base level government that is necessary for society to work. There has to be accountability and civil defense. There has to be. If not, the bullies will come. The Amalekites will rise. And so this is 100% how you should structure your society. If your entire society is at this level, right? This is mayors, councilmen. This is, we have parishes here, not counties, but like parish president and parish councils over city councils. And like this is that level of government broken down. And so this is how you structure yourself as a society in order to succeed. And to have it laid out is a good thing. To have it codified where you can speak it is a good thing. But that does not mean that every part of it is good. It doesn't. Anything that requires blood sacrifice is evil. Alright, so have these people judge at all times, and they can bring you any major issue, but all the minor cases they can judge on their own. If you follow this advice and God so directs you, you will be able to endure. Moses listened to his father-in-law and did everything he said. So Moses chose capable men from all Israel and made them heads of people, of leaders, thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. And they judged the people at all times, and they would bring difficult cases to Moses, but any minor issue they would judge themselves. And then Moses sent his father-in-law on his way, and Jethro returned to his own land. Okay, so that makes me think that maybe there wasn't the conversion part, right? This was just Jethro like, hey, bro, you've been skated out long enough. Here's your wife and children. Like they left on fairly decent terms, I guess. But he's like, here's your wife and children. You're now responsible for their care and upkeep. You might want to reorganize the situation a little bit. I'm glad everything worked out for you in Egypt, and I'm going to bounce back over here. No, you don't need to come with me. You don't need to bring these 3 million people up here where my people are at. You don't need to do that, right? Let's look at it, right? We're looking at where they at. Scope it out. This is Midian, right? This is where his father-in-law is from, is up here. This is the area where they're at, down here in the area of the desert of sin. It might be as far out as this way, right? And so he met them, and he came down, and he brought his wife, and he's like, all right, I'm bouncing back up here. Y'all do y'all's thing. And so in this next chapter, we're going to wind up right here. That's why I had it pulled up. But and so now we're going to get into 19. Israel at Mount Sinai. Now, there is a whole lot of debate about where Mount Sinai is. I have talked about it before. Where I believe it is right here. Right? This issue right here is where we're at, Jabal al-Awas. Other people put Sinai way down on the Sinai Peninsula. I don't buy that for half a second. Like, it doesn't fit biblically for me. We will get into many more details as to why. But this is one of them, right? Directly after he meets with his father-in-law, who is from Midian, they go to Sinai. And they're on the back side of Sinai, right? The east side of Sinai here. And so we're going to look at it. And in the 3rd month of the same day of the month that the Israelites had left the land of Egypt, they came to the wilderness of Sinai. And after they had set out from Rephidim, they entered the wilderness of Sinai, and Israel camped there in front of the mountain. Now, this is the Sinai Peninsula. And so people think that this means that the Sinai mountain is way down here. But this is where I believe it is right here. And I believe that the desert that we're talking about is this one right here along the edge. I believe that they came up this eastern side here, and they could see Jabal al-Awas, and right over here is actually Sinai, this black one, right? So if you're looking from this side over this way, then this looks like the mountain of God. It's probably a little bit less elevation than here, but it looks like it has been burnt. And then if you get up on it, we've talked about the landmark on it before, but there is, let's get my scope right up in here. Here's the altar of Moses. Right on the side here is the Pentagon on Mount Sinai. Now, I didn't put this pin here. Somebody else did. There is a natural Pentagon formation here. There is a natural hexagon formation along the outside edge of that. Now, you can take from that the Pentagon and the hexagon and do with it what you will, but there is a religious ornament being held by one of those people who supposedly came from this place that is one of those shapes. And so, go from there. I believe that they were camped right down here where it says the altar of Moses, right? Like, I believe this is the location. That's enough of that. Let's get back into the book. And so, then Moses went up to God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain. This is what you are to tell the house of Jacob and explain to the sons of Israel. You have seen for yourselves what I did to Egypt and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, you will be my treasured possession out of all the nations. For the whole earth is mine, and unto me you shall be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you were to speak to the Israelites. Now, you can make the argument, definitely, that he did not carry them out on eagle's wings. That they fled desperately in the middle of the night, ran as far as they could, got stuck in front of the mountain of Baal, who then opened a way for them to cross the waters. You can definitely make that argument just by reading the book. And that, not only that, but that the bloodshed of the Egyptians could have been avoided, but that it was a wanted thing in front of that mountain. And Moses went back and summoned the elders of the people and said before them all these words that the Lord had commanded him. And all the people answered together, we will do everything that the Lord has spoken. And so Moses brought their words back to the Lord, and the Lord said to Moses, Behold, I will come to you in a dense cloud, so that the people will hear when I speak to you, and they will always put their trust in you. He's like, all right, we're going to do this so I don't have to mess with y'all no more. We're going to do this so that maybe you can get it right. I don't think that this entity was wanting to set down the laws that were really set. But there are rules that are in play, and the other side has to agree to those and abide by those too. And so one of the things that had to happen was that the law had to come down in the way that it did. The Ten Commandments themselves are no problem. It is the extension of those well past the intention of those. And so, and then the Lord said to Moses, Go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow. They must wash their clothes and be prepared by the third day. For on the third day the Lord would come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. And you are to set up a boundary for the people around the mountain and tell them, Be careful not to go up on the mountain or touch its base. Whoever touches the mountain will surely be put to death. No hand shall touch him, but he shall surely be stoned or shot with arrows. Whether man or beast, he must not live. And only when the ram's horn sounds a long blast may they approach the mountain. And when Moses came down from the mountain to the people, he consecrated them, and they washed their clothes. Be prepared for the third day, he said to the people. Do not draw near to a woman. All right, we're not going to go back, but we're going to kick back to Genesis real quick, because God created a helpmate for men. He did not create a defiling place. And here is one of those spots where things get really bad, right? This whole women turn you into a defiled thing that must be cleansed is another one of those very, very serious problems, because God created women too. I know that the traditional interpretations of these books don't really like to talk about it as much as they like to talk about it. Because when God created a woman to be the completion of a man, it was not to be overbearing, but not either to be subservient. You are to take into consideration one another, because the two become one. And a man who ignores the advice of a good woman is a fool. And a woman that does not listen to the word of her man is a fool. And that is real. But having sexual congress with your mate, who God selected for you, and you consecrate in front of somebody, and You are monogamously devoted to this person, and you are doing everything right, but you had sex, so you can't go into a religious ceremony. It's fucking dumb. And the fact that that lasted as long as it did is astounding to me. And I know I upset somebody when I cuss, but that was very much an intentional thing, because we have to get that excised out completely. The thought that a genitalia difference can make a difference, whether or not you should be able to speak or do, is dumb. Now, not everybody holds the same weight of opinion, because a foolish man will speak before a wise man will even think. And so, not everybody needs to be listened to equally, and that goes male or female. We need to quit listening to dumb people, and we need to quit doing dumb things, but we need to get past the point where we're blaming that on sexual genitals. It's just stupid. It's just stupid. But we do see a pattern of that in this book. And it goes along with the same people who are telling you to give a blood sacrifice are very much concerned about the blood that issues from the life-giving flow of a woman. Now, I'm not saying it's a pleasant thing, but there's nothing disgusting about the situation. It is a natural, wonderful process. Now, again, I don't want to watch it, but that doesn't mean that if I touch a woman when she's having her period, that I have to go through this ceremonial process of cleansing myself. And any God that tells you that you do is wrong. I would go with the God of Genesis. I'm not shy about talking about how I'm with the law of the covenant. We are to go forth and be fruitful and multiply and do not shed the blood of man. All of that is contained within the Ten Commandments. All of that is contained within the one commandment that Jesus gave us, to love the Lord thy God with all of thy heart, soul, and mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself is the sum of the law, right? That was what he was trying to tell you. That is what I am trying to tell you, but that is not what Moses is trying to tell you. And we take the fact that the Ten Commandments are righteous and true, and we take the fact that the way the judges are set up is righteous and true, and then we extrapolate from that all of the codified laws that are coming are also perfect and true, and that is simply not the case. And we need to discern the difference between them. And that is part of the reason why I'm doing this, because there are very good reasons why we have Deuteronomy. There really is. I know it is a boring read, but if you read it, it tells you how to tell when to plant your crops, when to pick them, how to store them to use again. Like, it contains very detailed information in how to run a society. It has some very wrong parts too, and so we have to go through and pick those apart. I don't like taking away from the overall value of the book to dig into the details of what's wrong, right? I am doing that because it needs to be done, because altogether we need to discredit the system upon which has been built from this book. The overarching message of this is great. The overarching message of what we're reading here is great. But if you can get into this, do not draw near to a woman, because she is having the life cycle that God has given her. You are serving the wrong God. You are. You are not serving the God of creation if you are in this line of thinking. You're not. You are supposed to live in thankfulness to the true creator God of the entirety of everything. He who created all things. Okay, now let's go ahead and wrap this one up. And so on the third day, when morning came, there was thunder and lightning, and a thick cloud was upon the mountain. And a very loud blast of the ram's horn went out, so that all the people in the camp trembled. Now, the ram's horn. We haven't dug into that since Genesis, I don't think, but we need to, because the ram's horn becomes very significant from this point forward too. The ram's horn signifies the same sound as magnetics. I've talked about it before, and I don't have the audio pulled up now. Maybe I'll do that on the next one where they do a ram's horn, but it's a wah. That's what a ram's horn sounds like, and that's very much the same sound that magnetics makes. That is very much what I believe the sound was at the time of the expulsion from Eden. The flaming sword, I believe, made that sound. And I believe that it is also the same sound that we heard when the waters rose from the deeps and the earth was flooded. I believe it was the same sound. I believe it was a and I believe it was external from the planet, and that it was something that everybody heard. And so it became ingrained in their memory, and it became a power note for them. Because magnetics are real, and magnetic manipulation is a thing, and there is a current sheet that we ride in, and different things happen when you get to different parts of the current sheet. And so what we have coming is what has come before. There is nothing new under the sun, but this cycle is very real, and we are going back into the Eden part of the cycle. We're not at the Noah part anymore. We're going into the Eden part. And so the expulsion from Eden is symbolic, but I believe that it was a record of what literally happened the last time the earth did its little thing and it flipped. That happens. And so the magnetics that we're going to hear is going to sound like a ram's horn. So when you hear the sound, know what it is. I hear you, big guy. I'm almost done. Hang tight. The window's open. You can go out. And Moses spoke, and God answered. Okay, when Sinai was completely enveloped in smoke, because the Lord had descended on it in fire, and the smoke rose like the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain quaked violently. And as the sound of the ram's horn grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him in the thunder. And God said, like we didn't stop and hit it, but God said, yeah, we're gonna pull a fast one on them. I'm gonna say this so that they'll believe you from now on. You don't have to keep coming to me again. Like he did it. This is the third time he's told Moses, quit coming to me. And so, the Lord descends to the top of Mount Sinai and calls Moses to the summit. So Moses goes up, and the Lord says to him, go down and warn the people not to break through to see the Lord, lest many of them perish. Even the priests who approach the Lord must consecrate themselves, or the Lord will break out against them. Now, he's already told them that if anybody gets too close, kill them. Don't touch them, kill them. I believe that there is an electromagnetic buildup that happens in the presence of the Lord. That's why you have to take off your shoes and ground yourself in the presence of the Lord. And that's also what happens with the ark. And I believe that that's part of what happened with the manipulations of the waters and all of those things. We've talked about it all the way through. And so I think that this concentration right here in this particular area of the ground may cause some severe complications if you get too close to it. A static charge that might kill other people. You might unleash a bolt of lightning if you get too close that would reach out and touch everybody. They have to go through special processes to make sure they don't have any oils in their clothing so that they can be in the presence of the Lord this far away. But they're close enough where they can see Moses and hear him speak and hear the response, despite the wah, wah, wah. That's why I think that this point of power right here is a big deal. I think that maybe they were gathered in this area, and it was probably just the men, because fitting 3 million people in this area would be hard. 600,000 is still a pretty tight fit, but if they had them addressed by ranks right here, and then Moses was here, and you had guards up in this area with the boundary, it makes sense. This is also just hidden enough from this area that Moses could stand on this edge, and this area right here would have the visual effects that are giving the desired thing. That's why I believe it. That's why I want to show it to you. I see you, big guy. Where are we at? And on the third day, the morning came, and there was, okay. The Lord descended to the top of Mount Sinai and called him up, and even the priests who approach the Lord must consecrate themselves, or the Lord will break out amongst them. That is I'm pretty sure that's electrical discharge. Like, I can't be positive, right? But I'm pretty sure. Like, the God of thunder is a thing for a reason. And they were up against the mountain of Baal, the storm god. The people cannot come up on Mount Sinai, for you solemnly warned us, put a boundary around the mountain and set it apart as holy. And the Lord replied, go down and bring Aaron with you. But the priest and the people must not break through to come up to the Lord, or he will break out against them. And so Moses went down to the people and spoke to them. And we're not going to get into the Ten Commandments. We will come back into that next time because we're getting a little bit long and I don't want to lose your attention. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a very complicated bit of scripture here. It is very contradictory. I know that people look at it and they're like, how can you believe in the Bible and believe that there is misinformation in the Bible? I have a spirit of discernment. I am trying to show why I think the things that I do. I believe that the overarching message of what is going on here is so much more important than the very details of how it's done. It is perfectly fine and perfectly okay if you don't believe the way that I do. If you believe that common Christianity, the way that it has always been known and done, is enough, then that is enough for you. You don't need to be here. But some people like me needed a lot more explanation. And we needed to understand what was going on. And some things are not right. It's really not. And you can ignorantly do something and it not have a consequence as intense as if you willfully do something. And once this has been revealed to me, I can no longer go back to the level of knowledge where I already was. We are at another wall in another level of that knowledge here. So on the next one, when we get into the Ten Commandments and we start going into the laws, we are getting into yet another level of knowledge that you will be responsible for. So be very much aware from that. I will try to remind y'all before we start the next one, but this is another level of an area of responsibility that we're getting into. And so you will be responsible for the knowledge that you get from this. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pittstake. Peace.